workman's compensation, you mentioned that, I know that's something that you cover. What is it and how does it work?
Okay. Workers' compensation in Massachusetts is a wage replacement system. Okay, it's designed to give the injured worker lost wages when he or she is unable to earn the average weekly wage. Okay, so in Massachusetts, in the states are very similar. So I've done research in other states, but in Massachusetts, in order to be eligible for workers' compensation benefits, you have to meet a certain legal definition, and I'll give it to you. You have to be an employee who sustains an industrial accident arising out of and in the course of your employment, and as a result of the accident, you are disabled from earning the average weekly wage. So what does all that mean? Well, first you have to be an employee. You have to work for somebody, okay? And you have to be insured by that person who sustains an industrial accident. You get injured. Arising out of and in the course of your employment, that means it happened on the job, generally. And as a result of the injury, you are disabled from earning the average weekly wage. You can't earn what you were earning before. In other words, you're disabled from working. So that's really the concept is wage replacement. There are other benefits under workers' comp. For instance, you get paid for your lost wages, as I mentioned. You get paid for medicals, and they cover your medical bills once you what we call establish the claim. You get paid for the loss of use and function. If you have a permanent loss of use and function of a particular body part, you can get paid for that. And you can also get vocational retraining benefits. If, as a result of the industrial accident, you can no longer work at what you were doing, they, in some instances, will have to be they can be ordered to retrain you for some other job. Okay. What you don't get in workers' compensation is you don't get all the pain and suffering, and you don't get what we call the loss of enjoyment of life. Those things you get in a tort case. Okay, you don't get them in a workers' compensation case. And in workers' compensation, you are precluded by law from suing your employer. You cannot sue your employer. I had a case not long ago where we had a client who involved in a terrible, both a workers' compensation claim and a personal injury claim. It's what we call a third-party action. You, the employee, is the first party, the employer is the second party, and this other entity which may have caused you injury is the third party. Okay, that's what we call third-party claims. Under Massachusetts, under workers' compensation law in Massachusetts, you are precluded by law as the employee from suing the employer. You cannot sue the employer. Okay, but in this case, we had a fellow that was in the course of his employment. He was leaving a building, and they had just reconstructed the sidewalk and the ramps. And when doing so, the architect and the company which the architect designed this and the company which installed this did not put any kind of adequate warnings up to differentiate between where the sidewalk ended and where the ramp started. You just couldn't see it. Okay, when you have and the code, building code of Massachusetts requires a person, when you construct a piece of a building or sidewalks in this case, to make it known by either putting a strip there or different color or something. You can differentiate between the levels. So you avoid a step down when you don't, you have no clue you're going to step down. All of a sudden you step down. We've all probably done it, okay? Or many people have done it. In this case, when this fellow came out walking and he was, mindful of what was going on about him, he did not realize that this thing was a terrible step down. And soon doing so, he hyperextended his leg and had seriously injured his knee. I mean, very seriously. Unfortunately, a series of complications occurred in his medical treatment and the way the knee progressed. He eventually lost his leg above his knee, which was a terrible accident. And this is a great example how you made whole. No one's going to put his knee back on, his leg back on for him. It's an above the knee amputation. It's a very serious injury. It's very different than a below the knee amputation, which is still serious, but you've got much more ability to ambulate with a below the knee versus above the knee. And in that case, there was a significant recovery. And one of the things that an attempt to make him whole was to buy a van. He used a wheelchair and still does on occasion, although he has a prosthetic device now. But he had to use a van, and still does, to get in and out of buildings and so forth. Those are all priced. They cost a lot of money to buy these things. And so in his home, the way his home was constructed, it was an older home. He had significant problems ambulating within the house. He couldn't get around, particularly in his wheelchair. He couldn't get into certain rooms. So we had to reconfigure the entire house, the bathrooms, and so on and so forth. And he's a relatively big man as well. So there were a lot of issues in that case in trying to make this gentleman whole. And I will say this, he was one of the nicest people I ever met, and he still is. Wonderful person who came through it, well, because we were able to get the kind of monies that he deserved to try to make him whole.